Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, they're both planning on being here today in Cleveland, both giving those large rallies in downtown. And of course, with these large rallies, thousands of people are coming together in a very confined space. Of course, with the concern of the growing coronavirus, you can imagine that there are a lot of concerns at each one of these rallies. Biden will be speaking to supporters at Tri-C's main campus at 9 p.m. Sanders will be holding a rally at Huntington Convention Center at 8 p.m. Both of these events are still on despite concerns. And of course, this is leading up to the Ohio primary, which is next Tuesday. And because of coronavirus, polling locations are being moved away from nursing homes in Ohio. Governor DeWine made the announcement to move 75 locations out of nursing homes yesterday and suggests that people who vote to vote early. As for the candidates, Joe Biden says his campaign is taking every precaution necessary.
We're going to follow the recommendations of the experts of what we should be doing. And if they conclude that there shouldn't be big indoor rallies, then we'll stop big indoor rallies. We're going to do whatever they say.
And at this time, as for Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders' rally that's taking place today, again, there's been no talks of canceling any of these. But if you do plan on going, again, take precautions, wash your hands, cover your mouth if you're coughing, and if you don't feel well, just simply stay home.